Hello.
There's Tony there.
Speaking.
Hey, man, this is Jake. How you doing?
All right, how are you?
Yeah, it's good to hear you, man. You ready to go?
Yeah. What do you want? How do you want to do this?
Oh, we're just gonna talk, man. We're just gonna have a ball.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and I thank the spirits who are at work because it's taken quite a while to get a hold of my next guest. He's really one of the most unheralded multi-reed players that this country has ever seen, possibly the world has ever seen, and he's been dwelling in New Orleans for decades, playing with the headiest cats in the world, some of the greatest musicians and even better human beings. Had a chance to see him with the veritable Astral Project, which included Steve Masakowski, Johnny Vidacovich, and James Singleton at Snug Harbor a few weeks back, and it was just the perfect tonic to end my trip, part 2 to New Orleans. Tony Dagradi, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
You know, I want to just start with an audio clip. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to name the voice, but I do want you to listen to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
Well, what I've noticed as recent as the last time we worked together, there's a certain kind of, when you try to describe music, it kind of gets, with words, that is, it gets kind of, you get kind of lost.
welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
and so, with that being said, I often use the word magic because for me, I'm always looking for the magic in music. And as a musician, I'm always looking for the magic in a musician. And in reference to Henry Franklin, I hear that in his playing. Magic gives me inspiration. I hope it inspires the listener as well. But for me,
that was an interview I did with the late great Sonny Fortune. Not sure if you ever had a chance to meet him or play with him.
Yeah. No, I've heard him play, but I never had a chance to hang with him.
Well, I just want you to focus on the idea of the Look, he said he's always looking for the magic in the musician.
Sure.
And I want you to talk about that concept, the Tony Dagradi concept of that, and how that propels you, how it inspires you to create.
Well, okay. It's very my center and allow what's ever going to come through to come through. You know, I think every musician has that opportunity, and you know what happens. A negative thing that happens is you get in the way of what music could happen. So I try to stay out of the way and allow whatever is about to come through. So that's kind of the magic, and then the other magic is playing is the magic that happens with the people on the bandstand. You know, you have to have a connection with those people, and they all basically have to be looking and thinking similarly, looking for the same kind of revelations, you know. And that's what I find with Astral Project. We're all very trusting on the bandstand. Any good band, you know, all the great bands. You know, you had trust between the players, and that's why certain things happened. You know, Johnny Vidacovich is a great example, because his mantra is just making whatever's on the bandstand sound as good as it can be. As a drummer, he can really control that. And he control that in any genre. You know, I mean that's the amazing thing about him. He'll if it's a country and western gig, he's going to bring it to a higher level. You know, and if it's the highest level of a jazz gig, he's going to go there too. So I mean, I try to bring that to what I do as well. If I'm playing, like next week, we're doing a tribute to Professor Longhair, and it's going to be great. It's the 100th birthday celebration, and I want to be in the zone. I want to play as best as I can, as if it's for Fest, and you know exactly what the music demands.
When is that celebration?
That's this Wednesday evening at Tipitina's.
That is going to be such a ball, man.
There's going to be so many people there. I mean, George Porter is the musical director. Herlin Riley's going to play drums on most of it. I think Johnny B's going to play on a couple things. Stanton Moore's going to play on a couple things. But it's, you know, Korkanowski's going to play piano, Tom Worrell, a bunch of Tom McDermott. Just it's going to be a cavalcade of stars.
I mean, Fest deserves that, and he'll be smiling. You know, I just would love you to talk to the audience, because, you know, my generation as a Gen Xer, and then obviously much younger, we're just saturated with information. In so many ways, you guys were autodidacts. I mean, you had to listen to something on the radio one time. There was no rewind buttons. You had to put it in your ears, and then ultimately you had to figure it out on your own. Right. But you talked about getting out of your own way to seek revelation. Can you talk about a time early on when you were really fighting it, and how you learned to get out of your own way?
Well, you know, it's something that's like an ongoing process, and even today, I mean, you'll go to a gig, and instead of anticipating, you think there's a great band that's going to be really fun, and then all of a sudden, you know, for some reason, you know, cosmically, you know, people's biorhythms might be, you know, out the window, and you know, what you anticipated doesn't happen. So sometimes you can't predict it. And then sometimes you go on a gig with absolutely no preconceptions and thinking, it's going to be, you know, very dull. And it becomes, you know, the high point of your month or the year. So there's a little element of chance there. But, you know, I think every really serious musician is looking to play as well as he can every time he hits the bandstand. And certainly I do. But in terms of, I think the longer you play, the more consistency you have. But even within that, there's highs and lows, of course, even with the best musicians.
Can you, because what I was referring to with just having so much there's a book on, Pat Martino, how to play. There's a guitar book for Pat Martino, and there's all these, there's just so much information out there that people wind up, and then now you have music that's moved really into academia. So you have a lot of cats that are sounding like their teachers, and they're lacking that their own individual sound. I just would love you to talk about, really, going back to the late 60s or when you first really started to get on the bandstand consistently, if you could talk about how you developed your own individual sound.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly there weren't as many tools as there are today. And you're right. We didn't have the automatic slow downer, or but we still had recordings in terms of the learning process. We still had LPs, and if you were doing a transcription or trying to learn something, you would just keep picking up the needle and dropping it. Kind of killed the vinyl that way, but that was the only choice at one point. But I think that one thing that was very important to me, especially when I was in my late teens, early 20s, was I was surrounded by really great people my age. I was at Berklee College of Music, and I had a lot of friends that went to New England Conservatory. So, I was in a band with Alan Pasqua and with Anton Fig, Gary Valenti, Ed Schuler.
Are you kidding me? You were with Alan Pasqua in a band? That is so badass.
Oh yeah, man. We did a lot of things together, and Alan's a phenomenal player. So I mean, I learned a lot of stuff from my peers. My first ensemble at Berklee had Kenny Warner and John Schofield in it. But So there were a lot of people, and this was in Boston, of course, and there were a lot of people in Boston at that time who are very important to the Levano was at Berklee at that time, George Garzone, Jerry Bergonzi was all there. So there's really heavy people. Abe Laborio was in town at that point, and a whole bunch of people that I'm not naming, but those people were very influential because they were all really serious. And, I was, in terms of my own development, I was trying to find. I think initially when I got into jazz, I wasn't so focused. When I was in my early 20s, I think that was when I zeroed in on the music of John Coltrane, very pointedly. That became the bass line, and so that music was so high and so focused that I really tried to get everything, as much as I could, from that. Of course, I listened to everybody. I listened to Sonny, and I was listening to Miles, and just all the people that were the masters of the idiom, and trying to discern what made music great. I mean, I think that's like a big question that people have to get to personally. I mean, everything is good, but what makes it great? And like right now, I look at the younger generation that's coming up, and I'm very impressed with the technical abilities and the musicality. I mean, the music is being played at such a high level these days. But out of that, there has to be some people that come up and take it, beyond the technique and beyond even the musicality of it to a level of historic greatness, I guess. But and there will be. There's always people. I really enjoy Chris Potter. Mark Turner is a phenomenal tenor player, and these guys are just awesome. And there's younger guys. Ben Wendell is really, really impressive, and John Ellis is a great player. So many. I mean, I'm zeroing on tenor players because that's what I know the best. But there's so many players on every instrument that I think will further the music. I think one thing about myself that, in terms of people, when they talk about Astral Project, say, "Oh, everybody in that band is a unique player, has a very personal sound," and I think that's true. And I think I think how to develop that is you have to have you have to be true to yourself and try to explore the things that really interest you, and there's going to be some quirkiness in that. I don't think I set up trying to develop a personal style, but I think I tried to just do what I did as well as I could. And I think, when you do that, you develop the odd parts of your playing too, and that becomes what's distinctive. I think when people make mistakes sometimes, that becomes possibly a signature of their style.
Absolutely,
Wow.
and it's also a gateway to the astral plane. I mean, you can go off in a different direction, or what can be perceived as a mistake. If the entire group is channeling that, then that goes off in that's where the magic of music exists.
Yeah, and probably people think certain things are mistakes, but for me, they're not.
And the audience, and they really, unless it's just completely
things on the bandstand that as I'm doing them, I'm really engrossed and involved, and I go, wow, this is really interesting. It's like being a mad scientist. You find something that you want to explore, and I go, wow, this is really interesting. I've been really enjoying the engagement of solving this puzzle. And then occasionally I'll look around and I'm thinking, can anybody else understand what's going on? Do they think I'm just messing up?
It's funny. You're talking about Professor Longhair. I was reading this transcript of an interview with the guitar player Jerry Garcia, and they asked him, they said, what are your views of young guitar players now? This is back in 1985. And he said, it's a little hard for me to listen. The thing is, they're much more accomplished than they used to be, but that just means that the instrument itself has a much better book than it used to have. The electric guitar has an enormous vocabulary and several different kinds of mediums, all of which have expanded enormously in the last 10 or 15 years. That's all to the good. It just means the instrument has expanded. But young players, even if they're really brilliant technically, there's a thing like a guy like John Lee Hooker or somebody like that who can play 2 or 3 notes so authoritatively on guitar. That's like 60 years of real mean person, right? Who can scare the pants off of you in 1 or 2 notes, play with such immense authority and such soulfulness. That's a real thing. I mean, that's what I hear today. I think what you're talking about is there's a lot of great musicians out there, and there's an onus on technique and facility, and a lot less on like minimal playing, where you play a couple of powerful notes, and that has even more effect on the vibe of the room than anything else. I mean, did you focus on a certain time when you got into that Miles kind of zone, mad scientist zone, where it was less is more, where you were playing less notes with more impact?
Yeah, certainly. Miles is a great example, but even some Coltrane, at least in that time period, could also do that, with just a couple notes, and people get lost in the technique that Coltrane kind of laid out, but within that technique, I'm talking about going back even to the Sheets of Sound in the late '50s, but he carried it through his whole career. Even with all the technique that he had, and everybody since then has built on that, but even with all that technique, he was still playing melodies, and sometimes the technique was just to ornament and set off the very simple ideas that he was trying to put forward, and I think that is melodies. That's the thing.
When did you? At Berkeley, I've interviewed a lot of cats like that preceded Eugene Perla and Dick Burke and Harvey Mason. Mason was Alan Dawson was there at the time, and Dawson was like giving him. They basically just played duets. Like one guy would get on the trap set and one guy would get on the vibes, and then eventually Dawson gave Mace a gig with the Duke Ellington Big Band when it came through town. Mark Levine, the great piano player, trombone player, he would go to Jackie Byard's house, and Byard would say, okay, let's play Cherokee in all 12 keys. and they'd start, and Levine would fall apart in like the key of D or something, and then Jackie's like, okay, now you know what to do. I'll see you next week. It was like a 10-minute lesson, and I, you know, and so much of it is like, I don't want to just believe that it's all done contained in a lecture hall now, but can you talk about sort of the non-traditional lesson that you had at Berkeley that was, I mean, Levine literally walked out of there like almost on the verge of tears, but he totally understood what his mission was. He knew what he needed to work on. It was so simple.
Sure.
And you had professors, quote unquote professors, who were still playing, giving gigs to their students. Can you talk about some of that at Berkeley for you?
I think that always goes on. You know, all the drummers wanted to study with Alan Dawson, but he was almost never there.
He was never exactly. He had no time. You're 100% right. Yeah, no time.
Right. He was on the road with Dave Brubeck, I think, a lot. But Alan Dawson was the guy that everybody wanted to study with. But I actually saw Jackie Byard quite a bit, and he was a great teacher. I didn't go to New England. I was at Berkeley, but I had a lot of friends that went to New England, so I would sit in on some of those classes.
Exactly.
You know, there was one class where Jackie Byard, you know, I think the opening class of his jazz history course was, he started when he goes, you know, I was born. And, you know, so that was the beginning of his understanding of jazz.
Right, I dig.
You know, so that's what he was telling. He was telling everything from first-hand experience, which is really what you want. And you know, Jackie Byard is a master. You know, he could play anything. He was sort of like, you know, he's well known, but he's not. Except for the musicians who really know them, I don't think he's held as in high esteem as he should be, because
I agree.
He was a master of every genre. He could play stride piano, he could play bebop, he could play really out. You know, I mean, and I think the musicians that knew him, of course, understood that. They all considered him just a giant. So that was great to be around him. In terms of a weird lesson, I don't know. I studied with Andy McGee at Berkeley, so he was great. He was a great saxophonist, and he actually showed me a lot of things. It was not so unorthodox, but he showed me a lot of things that I needed to do at that time. And it was very important to me to be studying with him. You know, I mean, I walked in the first lesson, he just like looked at my fingers and he said, you got to stop doing that and start doing this. You know? Wow. So that was like a life lesson that immediately impacted everything that I did, you know, just because of the fingerings that I was using. And then he showed, he did some very important things with me in terms of just some of the technical things. He showed me the Slonimsky thesaurus of scales for the first time. He showed me some classical literature for the first time, and then he also showed me some. We worked on some Coltrane transcriptions, you know, that he had, and so I was playing them for the first time. And that, you know, and all of this stuff, I really, at that point, I was only 18, so I didn't really know what it was or the importance of what it was, but it's the same stuff that I've showed my own students for nearly 40 years now.
How do you account for the fact that, you know, I'm being kind of serious, like, I mean, obviously outside of like, you know, when you have like a teaching staff like at Oberlin with like, you know, Eddie Henderson and Gary Bartz, you know, those kids are definitely not going to come out sounding like their teachers, but how were you guys able to learn from your teachers and not wind up sounding like them? Would they actually say to you, you're sounding too much like me? Like, how did you develop? Because I mean, everybody. I mean, I've interviewed Bill Cosby twice before the world caved in on him, and you know, his dream was to become a jazz drummer. You know, he was obsessed with Elvin Jones, and he would take Camille when they were dating to to wherever they were playing the quartet, and Elvin was sweating and he'd hug Camille. And the point is that Bill could put on a blindfold, and it wouldn't matter if he could tell if it was Tony Williams or if it was Mickey Roker or if it was Pete LaRocca. He could tell every drummer just by their sound. And I'm trying to figure, and today you really have an issue. In my mind, I mean, again, I don't listen to a lot of mod improvisational music. I will preface that. But at the same time, when I do, I don't hear individual sound where you can just pick out somebody. And I'm trying to figure out how those guys were so deft at basically teaching you correct fingering techniques, going through different types of things, and still but really emboldening you guys to find your own voice.
Wow, it's a big question. I think that not everybody is going to find that because I always feel that there's like a 15-year-old wherever the music is, that's where a young player is going to start.
Right.
So there's lots of 15-year-old tenor players now that are in their bedroom practicing along with Michael Brecker solos.
Right.
That's going to be that's going to be the baseline. Where that's their starting point because that's where the music is, and so the music has to go beyond that. But I think that to have your own sound, I don't know if you can start out saying I'm going to have my own sound. But I think you just as long as you're true to yourself, and one thing that I was always encouraged to do by everybody, by the teachers, and this is part of the time, part of the late 60s, early 70s, not only by the teachers but peers. Everybody was sort of on a mission to first be able to deal with the music. So you had to know, the standards. You had to learn the music and understand what people did before you. And most importantly, you sort of had a mission that everybody should be having, and that is to further the music. So what can you do to further the music beyond where it is? So that was kind of a big responsibility, I think. And I was lucky that I was around people that were all thinking like that. They were all thinking, okay, we can't just, the attitude was we all felt that we can't just copy what people did. We had to understand it and study it and then, develop something beyond that. And everybody that I was hanging with felt an obligation to do that.
Well, it's a beautiful way to say it. I mean, do you think that the advent of, I don't want to say this, but just the complexity and diversity of technology and computers has created shortcuts? Was there more room for imagination when it was still an acoustic medium?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that another aspect of that is that everybody in the world has the ability to look at anything that's available. We all have the same. So maybe I think it's created a little more homogenization in terms of everybody can look at a Jamie Abersol play along thing, or anybody has access to any recording in the world, from the internet. So you don't get what for me, what some of the most interesting things today are the different world music angles. If somebody comes from another part of the world and they incorporate their musical heritage of that country, if they're from Asia or from Africa or from Eastern Europe, and you incorporate that into a jazz setting, then it's going to immediately give it a distinctive and unique character.
Did you did you play? There was this was a little bit Well, it probably was around the same time. What were you, Berkeley, 69? Or what years were you at there?
70 was my first.
What a time to be there. Were
it
you?
was really great, yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. Were you playing in a place called the Combat Zone?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I want you to talk about because I want you to talk about, because to me that you were playing to real dancers. You had to hit their moves. But truthfully, if you were going to play, all blues or some, you could blow over the top for 20 minutes, and it was just like, free expression, and you were getting paid, and it wasn't like you had an audience there that was paying $60 to expect to hear some kind of tame music. It was, to me. Can you talk about that experience and how it helped you?
Well, my experience in the Combat Zone, I don't think I ever did a jazz gig in the Combat Zone. All the gigs that I did are like just some funk gigs.
Yeah. I did. It was like organ duos and stuff.
Yeah, kind of like that. I played, and it was scary too, because at that time it was like run by the mafia, and I didn't much like playing in the Combat Zone. One funk gig where it was really like some of the best musicians that I knew. We all said, well, let's make a little money together, and so we did that. But I think that I learned a lot on those. But I did a lot of jazz gigs that, with student, organized groups. We played at the Zircon, at the 1369 Pub, just like the local jazz gigs, which didn't pay much money. But that they were very important to my development. I was writing, I was composing, and we were playing the music that I wrote, and with other people, and we were all writing. We were all trying to like explore, the music that we were listening to, and write original music for it.
What was the name? Zarkon. What was the name of the club?
Called the Zircon.
I've never really ZIR. Well, how do you?
Zircon is in Cambridge. It was a pretty important club.
Oh my God! I'm not getting so hip to this.
A lot of folks, Liebman would come there with his group. I forget the name of the group that he had, but it was like right after he played right after he was doing the gig with Elvin.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of it either, but it was like Lookout Farm. It was like,
right. Yeah, so it might have been that. It might have been Lookout Farm. And that would be a room that he would play, and other people like him would play when they came to Boston. And then of course I sat in at the jazz workshop. But I didn't ever do it as a gig, but the jazz workshop and Paul's Mall were the places where I got to see. Everybody. I got to see Pharaoh Sanders.
Rasan, maybe? Rasan?
McCoy, yeah, Rasan. I saw Rasan a lot. I saw Rasan a lot in New York because I grew up in New Jersey. So
I don't think I knew that. You grew up in Jersey?
Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey.
That's great.
I went to New York all the time. I took piano lessons from this guy Tony Aless, who was a great bebop pianist, and he's another person that was really very, very important to my early development. He gave me he basically gave me my piano technique, and so yeah, that was really important. And also I was studying arranging and orchestration with him. That was really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, did you go to the Red Hill Inn at all?
No, I don't know that.
Yeah, well, Brecker used to go there and see. Randy Brecker used to go, and that was in Jersey. I don't know what the town was, but like Miles would be playing with a Harmon mute on his trumpet. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I also wonder about. I think the other thing that I want you to riff on right now is, and I saw this on full display with you guys at Snug Harbor. It's called dynamics. It's called tension and release. It's like tension and release. Like that to me is the vibe is all about dynamics and tension and release. And unfortunately, or for what it is, you have cats you walk in and they'll start a set and they'll turn it up to 10 and it never leaves 10. And I wonder about the fact of playing joints like the one in Cambridge, or, the idea that amplification. How did you learn dynamics? I mean, because you guys definitely in Boston and stuff, you did not. You were playing out of PA systems. They were rust. Sometimes the bass wasn't mic'd. Not every drum mic. Not every piece of the drum was mic'd. So, where did your ears grow the most on the bandstand?
It takes a while, and looking at, I've been teaching at Loyola University in New Orleans for about 30 years now, and so I always have to remind myself how young everybody is, and everybody's between 18 and 21, 22, so that's the age that we're talking about, and so there's a lot to learn, and some people, come with a little more experience, a little more understanding. For me, it was over a long period of time. I was only starting to learn that when I was in Boston. And I think that, what you heard on the bandstand at Snug Harbor, that's from years and years of doing it with people who, like I said, Johnny Vidacovich and James Singleton and Steve Medico, these are all masters. And Johnny especially is like the ultimate accompanist. He's more so than almost any other drummer, and he being able to work with him, because other drummers you can't do that with it. It's just like sometimes you can't do it because of the people you're playing with. But with Vidacovich, he encourages that. He has a lot of dynamics in his playing, and so it's very natural. It was very natural for me to gravitate to create textures with a lot of different shapes and dynamics.
Do you? Johnny is definitely from the older guard, but do you feel like the drums, the role of the drums has changed in melodic music? It was, to me, you listen to any of the masters, the Kenny Clarks and the Tiny Khans and the even Elvin. He was bashing sometimes, but those guys, it was like part of the group sound. It was an accompanist instrument. And then in the early 70s, you had very tasteful cats like, Alphonse Mouzon or Lenny White or, even Billy Cobham. And then this, the music got louder and louder. You talk to other drummers and they said it started to sound like machine gun fire, and so in your mind, what for drummers out there, if they're trying to play music that ultimately is going to raise the collective consciousness of the band and then the audience, what does an accompanist mean as it relates to the drum set?
Well, first of all, the guys you pointed out, that was all, Billy Cobham, Alphonse Mouzon, all those different guys. They were playing. They were like, that was like the fusion era.
Exactly. That was the fusion.
That was like a specific type of thing. And I saw Billy Cobham play one time with John McLaughlin's band. And
Mahavishnu,
was like amazing. It was like amazing and super loud. But just the technique that was going on was just awesome. But that's not straight ahead kind of playing. For me, Vidacovich is an amazing straight ahead player. And in the world today, I think that maybe Brian Blade epitomizes that more so than anybody else. He's like Johnny was his teacher. He's a disciple, a Vidacovich disciple, and he does what Johnny does better than anybody else in the world. And plus Brian, also has his own personality too,
absolutely,
that he brings to it that nobody else brings to it. I think for me, Brian is sort of like a merger between the stylings of Vidacovich and Elvin Jones. I think those are some of his two favorite drummers, and he's put them together in a way that's magical, and if you're talking about dynamics, Brian is an amazing dynamic player. You know, he can play soft and very intense, and he can play loud. So, I mean, it's like when you play with him, it's you have the whole spectrum to choose from. It's quite impressive.
Talking to Tony Dagradi here on the Jake Feinberg Show. Really a high honor here on a Friday morning. Got another audio clip. Got another audio clip for you, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Okay, thanks.
Jackie hated backbeat, but he probably told his drummer that he didn't want to be cordoned in or locked into a particular pattern, because those patterns have a tendency to keep you from being able to create beyond the parameter of that pattern. So he may have been working with his drummer for that reason, but all of us grew up with backbeats and shuffles and all that, so there was no hate for that sort of thing, because we all attended those same parties and played for those same cabarets as everyone else did, including Jackie. What he was probably trying to do and say to, who was that, Lenny?
Lenny.
What he's probably would say to Lenny is that not to lock him in and to leave the door open for him to do what he needed to do as far as creativity was concerned. And if you notice today, it's gotten to a point where like certain patterns and certain things and certain styles of music are in vogue, and whoever does that best is the ones who get the most calls, the most jobs, and so forth. But you mentioned something very important when you talked about Elvin, Kenny, Max, Wuhan, and Mickey Roker.
Pete LaRocca.
And no, Pete LaRocca didn't come to mind there, but Mickey Roker did.
And Roy Brooks too. Well, Roker is a Philadelphia like you.
Now and Louis Hayes.
Yes.
And notice that all of those people that we thought about there, like they all had a particular powerful character on the cymbal, and the way, and Michael Carvin, the way the cymbal beat was made, and the way that you could hear them dance on that cymbal, and that would set the tone of the groove in the band, and it had a lot to do with where the music grew to. Before it got to where it is today, where you can go to and hear a band play a whole set, and they will play some really beautiful stuff on the drums, and never really have a characteristic shown through that cymbal beat.
All right, Mr. Dagradi, you want to take a guess at who that is?
Boy, I have no idea.
That was my interview from June of 2016 with the bass player Reggie Workman.
Oh, wow.
And, I want you to talk about that. Again, not with Johnny. We're talking about the high of the high. But just the idea of that, like, can you talk, like, there was this story that he let in with that was cut off. It was Lenny White was like 13 or 14, and his dad was bringing him to these jam sessions playing with Jackie McLean, and McLean would turn around to him and say, no backbeat. And I want you to talk about how you, if you do put yourself in positions with younger, less experienced drummers, how you get it across to them in this very, very, very heavy sort of electronic drum, double drum, sort of pulsating double drums, backbeat. How you get them to loosen that up so it doesn't lock you in.
Yeah. Well, that's a big question. And that's a big question with any instrument,
yeah, it is.
And a young player too. Sometimes there's not a whole lot you can do because, to get people to move. I mean, everybody who's young is really excited about what they're doing and probably learning it for the first time. And if it sounds good, great. But the tendency when you're younger is to really play a lot of the stuff that you know that you like, and not so much serve the gig of the moment, and that comes with more maturity. And I have found personally that you can't really, you could say a few things, but you can't expect huge changes, I don't think, immediately. Maybe I always feel that it has to be something, a learning experience, and a learned experience takes some time sometimes.
What, like, do you have I mean, because when Jackie was yelling at Lenny, you can bet that he stopped playing backbeat. I just wonder about. I wonder about it's sort of like that nonverbal communication. It's I remember interviewing Dave Holland, and when Coltrane first joined Miles, he would keep coming up to Miles and saying, what do you want me to play? What do you want me to play? And Miles just kept turning his back on him. He didn't excoriate him. He just didn't. He just said, what he was saying was, be yourself. I mean, was there a seminal moment with you with some older guard cats? I don't know. Maybe I'm just throwing out old school names. Whether it's.
I think I'm not sure if there's. I mean, there's definitely some moments. And I also I steer my students to those moments, hopefully. But one of the things that is very important for a young player is to play with musicians who are better than them. If you have a chance to play with a real master, that's the ultimate thing. But just playing with people who are a couple years ahead. If you're, especially in jazz, because you have to be so zoned in, as not only are you the performer of the music, you're the composer in jazz. When you're improvising, you're the composer. So when you play with people who are better than you, you are lifted up beyond your abilities. And I had that. I was lucky enough to have that experience early on. I got a chance to play with a lot of older musicians. Like when I was growing up in high school, I had some local guys in Jersey and in New York, and then when I was in Boston, I got hired to play on a few gigs that, I was definitely the young guy with the least experience. And that's a very important experience. Being the youngest guy in the band, the newest guy, is really, really important. And people should definitely take advantage of that and know that that's a position where they can learn a lot. And that continues on. And now I go on the bandstand, I'm the oldest guy, so.
Yeah, but I mean, I mean, do you feel? Is it unquantifiable? Music to me is unquantifiable, and we live in this age of data-driven. Everything's data-driven, and so I'm not sure. Like, I feel one of the reasons there's this huge issue with seeing a musician as a profession is because you can't quantify you can't interview every person that walks out of the club and how they were. If they were touched by the music, or if it gets them out of a funk, or if it gets them on a high for a week, you don't know that stuff is so integral. And I just wonder about going into 2019. What are you challenging yourself with as it relates to continuing the lineage of the music? Because you know what, like, Jackie Byard could sit there and say, I was born and that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my understanding of music. But you say play with people that are better than you. I would even argue people that are much older than you, and
yeah, sure.
Like the Benny Golsons are still around, and right. Jules Broussard and all these cats, shaman cats. But I mean, like, how much? What is your challenge in order to keep the lineage of this music alive and well? What is the challenge for Tony Dagradi in 2019?
Well, I'm at the age where it's not that I don't care, but I know that whatever I'm doing is viable. And
I love it. I love it.
I believe it myself. I have enough experience that if I say, well, nobody's ever done this before, but I'm going to do it. It's like a matter of, I don't care if anybody's hasn't done it before, and I know that because I thought of it and I want to do it, that it's something worth doing.
I dig it. I dig it. Yeah.
So I think that's something that everybody gains with a little experience. You just don't give a shit. So you don't care what other people think because you know what you know. So I'm at least at that point.
That's the perfect, dude. It is so. I love where you're at, man. And Tony, listen, I actually have to go to the dentist, but if I would love to pick up on part 2 with you. We just barely scratched the surface here. I've just been cooking for 50 minutes, but I'd love to keep going with you down maybe in the new year.
All right, sounds great.
All right, man. Yeah, and I'll get a copy of this out to you later today, man. And if I don't speak to you before then, have a ball at Fess's celebration.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, Tony. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, thank you.
Later.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Legendary horn player from New Jersey, now percolating in New Orleans, Tony Dagradi. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show today. I'll be on the road in Napa and Marin. Gonzo journalism at its finest. See you in a couple weeks. Until then, peace.